Imagine turning on your computer one day and realizing that everything you expected from a modern operating system has already been surpassed by something you once considered complicated, niche, or only for programmers. For years, people have argued about whether Linux could ever truly compete with Windows on the desktop. Windows dominated personal computers for decades, shaping how millions of people think about software, productivity, gaming, and everyday computing. But something interesting has been happening quietly in the background, and the latest Linux update is making many users rethink everything they thought they knew about operating systems. In fact, for a growing number of people, Windows is starting to feel outdated, bloated, and unnecessarily restrictive compared to what Linux is becoming. The new wave of Linux improvements isn't just about performance or security anymore. It's about the entire user experience. For a long time, the biggest criticism of Linux was that it required too much technical knowledge. Installing drivers could be difficult, software compatibility was limited, and the desktop environment often felt inconsistent. But today that story is rapidly changing. The latest Linux updates across several major distributions are introducing features that not only close the gap with Windows, but in some cases leap far ahead of it. These improvements are touching every part of the system, from the kernel and hardware compatibility to the graphical interface, application support, gaming performance, and even AI integration. One of the biggest reasons this update is creating so much excitement is the evolution of the Linux kernel itself. The kernel is essentially the heart of the operating system, the part that communicates directly with hardware and manages system resources. Over the past few years, kernel development has accelerated dramatically, and the newest versions are bringing improvements that directly impact everyday users. Hardware compatibility has reached a point where many devices simply work out of the box. Graphics cards from AMD, Intel, and even NVIDIA are becoming easier to use without manual configuration. Laptop battery management has improved significantly, meaning Linux laptops can now compete with or even surpass Windows machines in terms of efficiency and power usage. Another major breakthrough comes from the integration of modern graphics technologies like Wayland. For years, Linux relied on the aging X11 display server, which had limitations that became increasingly obvious as modern graphical environments evolved. Wayland changes the game by providing smoother animations, better security, and more efficient rendering. When you move windows around the screen or switch between applications, everything feels fluid and responsive. On high refresh rate monitors, the difference becomes even more noticeable, giving Linux desktops a polished feel that rivals or exceeds the experience on Windows. Then there's the user interface revolution happening across several Linux desktop environments. Projects like KDE Plasma, GNOME, and others have been evolving rapidly, focusing heavily on usability and aesthetics. KDE Plasma, in particular, has become famous for offering a level of customization that Windows simply cannot match. Users can change almost every aspect of the desktop, from the layout of panels and menus to the behavior of window animations and system notifications. Yet despite all that flexibility, modern Linux desktops have also become more beginner-friendly. Many distributions now ship with carefully designed default layouts that feel familiar to Windows users while still offering powerful advanced options underneath. Performance is another area where Linux is starting to shine in ways that make Windows feel heavy by comparison. Because Linux distributions can be optimized for different hardware profiles, many systems run noticeably faster on Linux than on Windows. Older laptops that struggle with modern versions of Windows often feel completely revitalized when running a lightweight Linux distribution. Boot times can drop dramatically, memory usage remains lower, and background processes consume fewer resources. This efficiency doesn't just benefit old hardware either. Even on powerful modern computers, Linux often feels more responsive because fewer system resources are wasted on unnecessary background services. Security is another dimension where the gap between Linux and Windows continues to grow. Windows has long been a major target for malware and ransomware simply because of its enormous user base. Linux, on the other hand, benefits from a fundamentally different design philosophy. Permissions are handled more strictly, and the open-source nature of the system allows security vulnerabilities to be identified and patched quickly by a global community of developers. Many Linux distributions now include advanced security features enabled by default, such as sandboxed applications, encrypted file systems, and secure package management systems that verify software before installation. Speaking of software installation, one of the most transformative updates in the Linux ecosystem has been the rise of universal package formats like Flatpak and Snap. Traditionally, installing software on Linux could involve complicated dependency management, where different applications required specific library versions that might conflict with each other. Universal packages solve this by bundling everything an application needs into a self-contained environment. The result is that installing software becomes as simple as clicking a button in a graphical app store. Applications update automatically, dependencies are handled seamlessly, and the overall experience becomes much closer to what users expect from modern platforms. Gaming, once considered Linux's biggest weakness, has also undergone a massive transformation. Thanks to technologies like Proton and the work being done by Valve through the Steam platform, thousands of Windows games can now run on Linux with little or no modification. Proton acts as a compatibility layer that translates Windows game instructions into Linux-compatible commands in real time. The result is that many games perform nearly identically to their Windows counterparts, and sometimes even better due to Linux's efficient resource management. The rise of the Steam Deck has accelerated this progress even further, pushing developers to ensure their games run smoothly on Linux-based systems. Driver support has improved dramatically as well, especially for modern GPUs. AMD graphics cards in particular have become a favorite among Linux users because of their strong open-source driver support. Intel's integrated graphics solutions also work extremely well out of the box. Even NVIDIA, historically one of the more complicated vendors for Linux compatibility, has begun improving its support for modern Linux graphics stacks. As a result, the barrier that once prevented gamers and creative professionals from adopting Linux is rapidly disappearing. Another reason this update is making Windows feel obsolete is the speed at which Linux innovations reach users. Because Linux is open source, development happens across thousands of contributors around the world. When a new feature is ready, it can often be integrated into distributions quickly rather than waiting for a large corporation's multi-year release cycle. This rapid innovation cycle means Linux desktops are constantly evolving. Features like fractional scaling for high-resolution displays, improved touchpad gestures, and advanced tiling window management have appeared in Linux environments long before similar capabilities reached mainstream Windows releases. Artificial intelligence integration is also beginning to play a role in the future of Linux desktops. Developers are experimenting with local AI assistants that run entirely on the user's machine, giving people powerful automation tools without sending data to external cloud services. Because Linux is highly customizable, users can integrate AI models directly into their workflows, automating tasks like code generation, document analysis, and system management. This level of control and privacy is something many users find increasingly appealing in a world where cloud-based AI services often collect large amounts of personal data. Privacy itself has become another major factor driving interest in Linux. Many users have grown uncomfortable with the amount of telemetry and background data collection present in modern versions of Windows. Linux distributions typically take the opposite approach. Most collect little to no user data, and when they do, it is usually optional and transparent. Users can examine the source code themselves or rely on community audits to verify how the system behaves. This transparency creates a level of trust that proprietary systems often struggle to achieve. Another fascinating aspect of this Linux evolution is the growing collaboration between hardware manufacturers and the open-source community. Companies like Lenovo, Dell, and System76 are now selling laptops that ship with Linux pre-installed and fully supported. These machines often provide a seamless experience where every component is optimized for the operating system from the moment you power it on. Firmware updates, driver compatibility, and system utilities are all designed specifically with Linux in mind. As more hardware vendors recognize the demand for Linux compatibility, the ecosystem continues to strengthen. The developer community has always loved Linux, but now everyday users are starting to see the same advantages. Programming tools, container platforms like Docker, and development frameworks all integrate naturally into the Linux environment. This makes Linux an ideal system for software development, which is why so many cloud servers and development environments already rely on it. As more people learn coding or work in tech-related fields, using the same operating system that powers the internet becomes increasingly attractive. Another important piece of the puzzle is system stability. Linux systems are known for running for long periods without needing reboots. Updates can often be applied without restarting the entire system, and crashes are relatively rare compared to some other operating systems. This reliability has long made Linux the preferred choice for servers. But as desktop environments improve, the same stability benefits everyday users as well. One of the most surprising changes brought by recent Linux updates is just how polished the desktop experience has become. Modern distributions often feature beautiful default themes, smooth animations, and carefully designed workflows. Installation processes have become simpler too. Many distributions now provide graphical installers that guide users step by step, automatically configuring partitions, drivers, and system settings. For someone installing Linux for the first time, the process can actually be easier than setting up Windows from scratch. Community support also plays a huge role in Linux's growth. When users encounter problems, they often find solutions through forums, documentation, and open-source communities that are eager to help. Unlike proprietary platforms where support might require expensive subscriptions or long wait times, Linux users benefit from a collaborative ecosystem where knowledge is freely shared. As these improvements accumulate, the overall experience of using Linux begins to feel refreshingly modern. Systems start faster, run smoother, and give users greater control over their computing environment. Meanwhile, Windows continues to add layers of complexity, advertisements, and background services that many users find frustrating. The contrast between the two ecosystems is becoming more visible with every major Linux update. Of course, Windows still dominates the desktop market today, and it will likely remain widely used for many years. But the momentum behind Linux is undeniable. Each new release brings refinements that make the system more accessible, more powerful, and more attractive to a wider audience. What once required technical expertise is now becoming approachable for anyone willing to try something new. The latest Linux update represents more than just incremental progress. It symbolizes a shift in how people think about operating systems. Instead of being locked into a single company's vision, users can choose from a variety of distributions tailored to different needs. Whether someone wants a sleek modern interface, a lightweight system for older hardware, or a highly customizable environment for advanced workflows, there is likely a Linux distribution designed specifically for that purpose. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, it becomes clear why so many people are saying this update makes Windows feel obsolete. Linux is no longer just an alternative operating system. It has evolved into a flexible platform capable of powering everything from tiny embedded devices to massive supercomputers, from gaming handhelds to enterprise servers. And now, perhaps more than ever, it is becoming a compelling choice for everyday desktop users. As more people experiment with Linux and discover how far it has come, the perception of what a modern operating system should be is beginning to change. The combination of performance, privacy, customization, and community-driven innovation is creating an ecosystem that feels both powerful and empowering. And with each new update pushing the boundaries even further, the idea that Linux could one day replace traditional desktop operating systems no longer seems like a distant possibility. It feels like a transformation that is already underway.